Where do you hope to take your career?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is something that I have multiple mentors that at this point every week we kind of check in, or every month, and that's sort of the question of like, what do you want to do? And they pose it to me, and I feel like every month it's kind of like a shifting, morphing thing where more things keep getting added into it. And one of the main things that I want to do is to teach at a university. And in doing so, I see myself in the future as a trumpet professor, but also as a professor for a music department that teaches at least one class on African American music, and also how people can apply that into their repertoire, and understand some of the socio-political background, but also the musical history behind it. And then I also see myself as working for a university in the capacity of doing some of the things that Creativity with Chloe is meant to do, in a way to help students. There's a great professor. I did my master of music at the Yale School of Music, and we had this great professor, Ashrid Baumgardner, who had this class that was really kind of life-changing for me, in that it had a very simple concept of, I guess, looking at some of these big picture things. And one of the projects that we had to do was forming a group with, I think, 2 or 3 other people, coming up with a program, and doing sort of market research for this program, going out into New Haven and saying, what would you like to see? How far would you be willing to go to see this concert? What would you like to hear? Does it matter what the people performing look like based off of the music that you want to hear? Some of these kind of interesting questions, and then actually doing the concert, and then kind of taking a step back and saying, if this was a real thing that we wanted to pursue, how would we develop this? Would we make it a nonprofit? Like, what you had to pitch this entire concept to the class after like 10 weeks of developing this project. And I thought like that was one of the most helpful things that really prepared me for this next venture of not being a student. And that's something that I think all students should really have access to, is this sort of I guess collective workshopping. And so I see myself as a trumpet player. I see myself as continuing to do my research, and being able to teach on a lot of the things that I have been researching and working on, but also helping people develop their creative process, and not just explicitly trumpet players, but musicians and creative artists, and creative people in general. So those are some of the things. But I guess as well, one of the things that I'm doing right now, I'm the co-chair for the Anti-Racism Action Committee here at UCLA in our School of Music. And so this whole notion of diversity, equity, and inclusion all factors into sort of everything that I do. It's funny, I was talking to a friend last week, and I was trying to figure out, do I explicitly say for Creativity with Chloe that there's also, kind of social justice woven into all of this? Like, having access to some of these resources is a social justice issue, because, having access to know how to, I'm in my 8th year of college, having access to know how to make my CV that much better. As I was preparing recently for a fellowship application, I had to, be enrolled at UCLA and have access to, meet with this professor. I mean, it's an expensive tool. Having a door open for you is an expensive tool. And so part of what I wanted to, say in this Creativity with Chloe was, all this is a social justice issue. My friend said, you are a Black woman talking about these things. You don't even explicitly need to say that they're a social justice issue, because just the fact of you talking about them and bringing them, and making them, I guess, bringing them to the foreground and making sure that people are aware of them is going to show that. And so through all of this is also woven this idea of, how do we make these spaces more inclusive, and not just in the way of, we're inviting, BIPOC people or people from diverse backgrounds to come into our space, but instead, saying we are creating space for these people, and we're also making sure that they're part of the infrastructure that creates the space for them, so that the people who are in charge of making these spaces look like the people they're creating the space for. So there's kind of been a lot of notions that I've been, working through of what does diversity, equity, and inclusion look for as a trumpet player, as as a researcher, and as a person, creating some of this programming for sharing personal development tools and tools for the creative process. So interwoven between these three things is something I'm very, very acutely aware of.